Hey, Patreon contributors, thanks for joining us for spoiler talk for the fifth Miriam Black book, The Raptor and the Wren by Chuck Wendig. All right, what are you going to shit on, buddy?
I'm not really going to shit on anything. One of the nice things that happens when you know that you're going to wrap up a series, I think, and it could happen anyway, is that you can start to kill off characters.
Yeah, I knew this is where we were going to go right away.
And right? So it's kind of cool because, if I would have said, hey, you think in this book Lewis is going to die? You're going to be like, fuck no, Lewis is her bae, right?
Yeah,
like, he's not going anywhere. Yeah. So, but with only one book left to go, he went ahead and did it, man. He pulled the trigger on Lewis. I did say bae.
Oh, wow.
I'm a hip kid.
You are hipper than I am, I think.
Yeah. So, my thing, I'm surprised she didn't say it at some point in the book, quite honestly. So...
That's a good point. Sorry to distract from the point.
No, but it's I love when that kind of thing happens, and when it's out of character. So when it happens like on a TV show, it's amazing. So I'll go back to the TV show 24. Did you ever watch 24? I think we talked about some
podcast. None of 24.
There was a season at like season 5 maybe or something that starts off, and in the first like 10 minutes they kill off at the beginning of a season they kill off a major character. Nice. And you're like, holy shit, that's fucked up. At the end of that episode, they kill up another major character. So you know what I mean? Like, you're like, holy shit, I can't believe that just happened. And then you feel like, okay, all right, that's calmed down. We're going to get into the story. And then they killed someone else off. So I kind of felt like that. When Lewis was dead, I had to go back and reread the passage. And then what I kept expecting was Wren, someone to have a power, birds to come stitch him up, some crazy shit. But no, he did.
That homeboy is gone. Here's the thing. I saw it coming the moment that he and Wren were in the same place, because she was a little out of control and he probably had the weird like silver lining thing or whatever she called it, the Mercury Men. So I knew he was a goner because she wasn't going to be able to control not killing that son of a bitch. But the interesting thing is that the implication of Samantha dying and it not being the way that, so like, I guess we kind of have to step back. Every time Miriam sees how someone dies, either they die that way or someone else dies to take their place.
Mm-hmm.
And that didn't happen this time. But it wasn't by Miriam's hand. It was by Harriet's hand that Samantha died. Yep. So maybe that just kind of like squares things or something. I was a little confused by that. But then like that opened the door for... Well, and then the tricky thing about that is if Samantha dies... No, she was still alive when Wren killed Lewis, right? Mm-hmm. And that's the trick, because she knew that Lewis was going to kill Samantha or kill someone, and she assumed it was Samantha. All right, I guess it kind of makes sense to me, but do you see where I was going with that? Like,
the way I thought about it was I knew how Lewis was going to get out of choking her on their wedding day and stuff, especially when Miriam tells him that.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, she's going to die and someone else is going to kill her, because that would be the other thing. So how do I say this? So when she touches somebody and she says, oh, in 12 years, this person's going to die from a stomach ulcer or whatever. If somebody else walked in and just put a bullet in their head right then, that's how they would die.
Right.
Did you follow what I'm saying? Like, it could be stopped by their
slate.
Premature death from something else. Now, I don't think that person is going to die of a different illness, but let's say they came into contact with someone that had a death. You know what I mean? So it's, if everything goes according to plan, that's how they're going to die. But in order for Miriam to stop somebody's death, if it's through, murder, really, she has to basically kill the person who's going to kill them.
Right.
Yeah. So...
Like a death for a death is kind of the unspoken kind of spiritual thing.
Yep.
Yeah. So I guess that makes sense now. It's the timing of everything. Had Samantha died first, it wouldn't make sense for Wren to kill. I guess it would. Anyway, it all happened. That shit happened.
Now, one other thing that I think we really need to talk about, right? She's pregnant.
Homegirl is knocked up.
And it's super interesting because the baby's inside her. Miriam is touching the baby and can see the moment of the baby's death, which is childbirth, I think, right?
I was a little confused by that whole thing, but
So her baby's going to die before it's born. I don't know, because they said something about seeing lights, and I thought that might have been like, not to get graphic, but, like through the vaginal cavity lights, like maybe seeing the lights of an operating room or, wherever she's giving birth.
Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting to see how he treats this death for a death thing. Now, nobody is killing the baby, at least that we know of. So if the baby's dying of natural causes, does there have to be another death? I mean, if Miriam dies, will that save the baby? Is he going to kill Miriam? We know it's the last book. So I imagine, I just have a feeling that Vultures is going to end in the process of childbirth.
Yeah, that's kind of the way that I took it. Because there was a whole, from death comes life kind of, thing. Like, her weird vision tells her, shows her that she is pregnant. And she knows that it's with Lewis because I'm guessing she just hasn't had the opportunity to sleep around with a bunch of other people. I took it as Miriam's going to die in order for her child to live. But the weird thing is, I felt like there was, an implication, and I could be way off, but there was an implication that somehow power, these weird spiritual powers, was part of the process of transferring. So the baby might get a power or something like that, but that just might be me having misread that.
Yeah, but here's what I almost feel like the trespasser gives the power, because how did Wren end up with the power?
Because she almost died in the river, in Mockingbird.
Oh, I see what you're saying. But we just didn't know that she manifested a power at that point. Because, Miriam gets it from getting beaten in the street by a crazy lady or something, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, so it's it's the near death or some violent tragedy that happened to them that causes the power to manifest. So for Wren, it was almost dying, and it was Lewis who saved her from the river, if I remember correctly. So
yes,
the fact that she then kills him with a gun kind of... That's some cold shit.
Yeah, it is. Wren is a little fucked up, so I don't know. We'll see Gabby. Gabby will be back in the next book. Obviously, that's who Miriam calls. So I like Gabby as a character. Probably better than Lewis, if I'm being honest.
But that means she's probably bringing the kid who can kill you with a touch, too.
Oh, yeah, 'cause she's looking after that little guy.
Yeah, she's watching that little squirt. So maybe they could just have a daycare of fucked up, powerful kids.
Oh my god!
So it's gonna be X-Men or something like that. Can we talk about the trespasser a little bit?
Yes, absolutely.
Because that concept evolved in this book, as far as I'm aware, or at least our understanding of it. So traditionally, my impression had always been that so Miriam had this trespasser who was this weird little voice that told her things and lied to her and kind of pushed her toward whatever her fate with being able to see people's deaths was supposed to the hand that she was supposed to have in fate. But it was always singular to her. And other people had powers as well. And I don't even know, was it ever really hinted that other people had trespassers?
Yeah, and I think that's touched on a little bit in this book, because there are people who were told weird things, and I have to imagine that was just the trespasser kind of whispering to. I know you said it's a voice, but really for her, it's a physical manifestation. Right. The same thing for Wren in this one.
So the tricky part is that it seems like it's implied that Wren has the same trespasser as Miriam, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And that kind of gives a bigger idea to the fact that is there one entity that's influencing all these people who have powers, right?
Yes, I think so. And I don't know about all of them, but obviously has the ability to move from person to person. It's also interesting because the trespasser had basically left Miriam alone for the most part. So I think the trespasser can really only be in one place at one time.
They have to focus. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, she was visited by the trespasser when they're robbing the dead guy, the elderly guy.
Right.
And then she sees the trespasser one other time in this book. But the thing that we forget, too, is that, she says it's been months since she's seen the trespasser. And this book covers over half a year, because she's with Gorski for a couple of months at their I forget where the other home is. Where they go, Pennsylvania or something?
Pennsylvania home, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then she's with Lewis in the woods for months and hasn't seen the trespasser. And that's really when all the Wren stuff is happening.
Right.
So it seems like He obviously can come back to her, but that it's not. He's not omnipotent. I don't think he can serve two people at the same time or whatever. Attach himself to two people at the same time.
Yeah, and the reason and I guess the proof that it's the same entity is the fact that the trespasser told Wren things about Miriam that the trespasser discovered with Miriam, right? So there's like a knowledge that the trespasser has that passes on to Wren through the trespasser. Anyway.
Yeah, that's what I was touching on in the review, is that something knows all the things that some of those things only Miriam can know.
Right.
So, yeah.
So that's an interesting, like, kind of twist. Like, it could be like a demon. It could be some sort of, like, weird haunting spirit or something like that. Who knows? But then that brings up the idea of, like, if we're going to have Miriam die, why can't she be someone's trespasser, but, like, in a good way?
Yeah, maybe. That's possible, too. It's going to be interesting to see how it wraps up.
Yeah. Birds would be another thing to talk about. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean... Yeah, the bird stuff's a little weird. I'm not a huge fan of the bird stuff.
So the bird stuff got interesting because, like, in Thunderbird, that's where Miriam literally dies in the desert and is stitched back to life / like stuffed kind of with, like, random nesty things by birds. And that's and she was able to command multiple birds, and they're like Chuck Wendig in Thunderbird, like, he turned the bird thing up to 11. And he kind of backed off of it, I feel, in this one, but there was still some, like, kind of expansion of stuff, because Miriam kind of completely leaves her body and goes into, like, all the birds in Pennsylvania, but in a way where she doesn't remember it and actually speaks through a fucking owl or something like that, right?
Yeah, the talking owl was probably the low point of this book for me.
Where it says, follow us or something like that.
Yeah.
But that could be, like, a setup for, like, kind of a longer plot point, like the whole idea that Miriam doesn't have to live inside of her body or something like that.
It's just such a weird thing, and my issue with it is this: obviously, we're dealing in a world that has rules different than what we're used to, right? Because at first, you're introduced to Miriam, and she's the only person with a power. So you go, okay, Miriam is unique, and Miriam's still unique, but she keeps running into people with different powers. So obviously, there's a subset of people that all have powers, but Miriam seems to have two very distinct powers. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's the see or death power and the control the birds power.
Right. Which I don't know what that means. Maybe they all have a second power that they don't know about. They just don't live long enough to use or whatever maybe Wren can hop into dogs, but she hasn't figured it out yet. So I don't know if that's ever going to be addressed, but she does have a second power that has literally nothing to do with her first power. So it's not like when you're watching the Superman, right? And you go, well, Superman he's super strong and he can fly and stuff, but then because he's super fast, he can do this other thing, like it's an expansion of a power.
Yeah.
This is completely unrelated to what her thing is. So for me, how do I say this? It is what it is. This is a story we're reading, but it does seem to be a way out when I really kind of like Miriam having to use her wits, because all she knows is when people are going to die. So that creates this really interesting thing where, because someone's death, what was it, the cop? When she gets stopped by the cop?
Yeah.
And she sees his death, and his death is that she, in like 3 seconds, pushes him into the road and a car is coming. Like, that's super cool. Like, she used her ability in a really intelligent way to get out of a situation, or Chuck did, I guess. But just like being like, oh, I'm under attack and we're outside, so I know what's going to happen. Birds are going to fucking save me. Starts to be one of those, like, easy out kind of things for me, at least.
Yeah, I can see why you would say that. I kind of dig on the bird stuff a little bit, not for any, like, reason that I can, point out, but I think it's an interesting exploration. And I have a gut feeling that it's gonna be kind of a major player in how everything resolves, which I know is probably going to piss you off.
We'll see. We'll see if there's a spoiler talk for book 6 in 2019.
Yeah.
And then, God damn it, we can put this thing to bed. Thanks, Chuck Wendig, for not writing any more books in the Miriam Black series. I really appreciate it.
You love these books, though.
I love these books. I always feel weird reviewing them, because I'm thinking, like I said, from a listener standpoint, and not the number of listeners, because I don't care, but for our regular listeners, Like, it just gets farther and farther removed if they haven't read them.
That's true.
Like, it becomes like, oh, I heard the first one, decided I wasn't going to read it, kind of listened to the second one, figured out it didn't make any sense. Fuck, they're doing a third one. Ugh, you know what I mean? Like, that type.
I take the optimist side of it, where it's like, if someone listens to our Raptor and the Wren one and they're like, oh, dude, I have to check this out. We didn't get them to read one book. We got them to read 5.
Touche. That's true. That's what I was just saying. I don't know how many books. I mean, I go back to Neil Smith. I would have never known who Anthony Neil Smith was if I didn't see the cover copy for Hogdoggin, which I thought was a dumb name, which is why I picked up the book. But when I read the Dust Jacket, I was like, oh, this sounds okay. Oh, wait, though, it's the second book in a series. So I'm back and read Yellow Medicine, which I wouldn't have picked up based on the cover art or the name. So, yeah, it works that way sometimes.
There you go. All right. I think I don't have anything else to talk about.
No, I think we talked much longer than I thought we were going to about this. So thanks for listening to Spoiler Talk. And thank you, even more importantly, for being a Patreon contributor. You make it possible for us not to pay out of pocket for this podcast. And we love you for that. So come back. It's going to be a few weeks. We're not going to read another book. So come back, check back in a few weeks for another episode of Spoiler Talk.